Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us today in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We will be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, Chapter 8. The story of Pingala. So the later half of the chapter. Hare Krishna, please join us for Harinam. Hare Krishna, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnavind ki jai. Please join us for Mangala Charan prayers. Together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiryet Sharatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Hyabhadrani Vidunoti Suhasatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavti Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 8, the story of Piṅgalā. It's part of Uddhava Gita. Here we'll learn how to achieve peace by applying lessons learned from these various gurus, right? So these are not considered as instructive spiritual masters, but Lord Dattatreya, Avadhuta Brahman, he has learned from them using his intelligence. So the focus is the use of our intelligence with the right purpose and not in a speculative way. So in this chapter, these are described and we'll be covering the 5 gurus. So we already covered 4 gurus in the last class. We talked about python, ocean, moth and honeybee. And today we'll be covering elephant, honey thief, deer, fish and the prostitute Piṅgalā, her story. Hare Krishna. Please join us in the recitation. It's a very short verse and purport, so we should be quick. In the recitation of verse 12 of 11th canto, chapter 8, the story of Piṅgalā. Sayantanam Shwastanam Va
Sayantanam Shwastanam Va
Na Sangrita Vikshukaha
Na Sangranita Bhikshuka
Makshika Iva Sangranan
Makshika Iva Sangranan
Sahatena Vinashyati.
Sahatena Vinashyati.
Please.
Sayantanam Shwastanam Va
Sayantanam Shwastanam Va
Na Sangrahit Bhikshuka
Na Sangrahita Vikshukaha
Makshika Iva Sangranam
Makshika Iva Sangranan
Sahatena Vinashyati.
Sahatena Vinashyati. Sayantanam
Sayantanam
meant for the night.
meant for the night.
Shwastanam
Shwastanam
meant for tomorrow.
meant for tomorrow.
Va
Va
either. Na
na
not. Sangranita
Sangranita
should accept. Bhikshukaha
Bhikshuka
a saintly mendicant. Makshika
Honeybee
Iva
like
Sangranan collecting Saha with Tena that connection Vinashyati is destroyed. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. A saintly mendicant should not even collect foodstuffs to eat later in the same day or the next day. If he disregards this injunction and, like the honeybee, collects more and more delicious foodstuffs, that which he has collected will indeed ruin him. Purport. Brahmara refers to that honeybee who wanders about from flower to flower, and Makshika is the honeybee which accumulates more and more honey in the beehive with great attachment. A saintly mendicant should be like a Brahmara bee, because if he imitates the Makshika bee, his spiritual consciousness will be ruined. This point is so important that it is repeated in this verse. Hare Krishna. Please join us for Guru Pranati. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Deenataranam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So here, in this story of Piṅgalā chapter, we'll be hearing about the 5 gurus. And these are not the initiating gurus, rather they are the instructing gurus. And the purpose is that we can achieve peace by applying the lessons we learn from these various gurus, 24 instructing spiritual masters of Lord Dattatreya. So he's referring them as gurus, which means instructing spiritual master, not the initiating spiritual master. And also, why are they called instructing spiritual master? Because these 24 objects that he observed in this material world did not reveal to him, they did not give him instruction. Rather, he used his intelligence to derive instructions from them, right? So there are 3 kinds of people we see in this world. First is one who learns from others' mistakes. So he doesn't commit the mistake. He learns seeing that others are making a mistake, so I should not do this, because it will lead to mistakes, right? It will lead to suffering. Like people who are doing over-endeavor, they are spending their life to collect things, just like this bee, honeybee, makshika. So these are like the yellow and black jacket bees, right? The black one is Brahmara, and it's bigger than these. And that Brahmar only takes little from different flowers. Doesn't do extra endeavor. When it's satisfied, it's happy. But these honey bees, which are referred to as makshika, they like to collect honey. And they collect it in beehive. And so they are doing extra endeavor to collect all this honey in the beehive. And what happens? They become attached to the beehive. So they're living in there, they're doing everything in there. And so attached to tasting honey, they don't want to leave. And the honey thief comes and then takes away everything from these honeys, right? Makshika. So the honeycomb is full of honey, of course, we know. So the honey thief comes and he takes away the honey. And the lesson we learn is that one should not engage in extra endeavor, over endeavor, because people who are very intelligent finding out where there is wealth, and they're very expert in snatching it away, and especially in this Kali age, we know that people who are, who are also following Ajgar Pravritti. That's also we studied from Python. The lesson from Python was that one should be satisfied with what comes in its own accord. Yet at the same time, there is Chanakya's story, which Srila Prabhupada shared with his disciples, is how an Ajgar, a Python, is so intelligent that without working, it enjoys all kind of facilities. And this is, he's giving with respect to the financial institutes, banks and, mortgage companies and others, where they, lend money, which actually was deposited in their accounts by the general populace. So they're giving it back to the general populace at a lower, at an interest rate, so that they can, distribute some of it as dividends to their stakeholders and to their clients. And so people have to work very hard to pay back this mortgage because there is hefty interest rate. And when they are not able to pay, then they take the house also. But when they take the house, they don't return the money they received. That's the Ajgar Pravritti, the behavior, how a Python behaves. And this behavior is that a Python never creates its own home. A mouse works very hard to dig a hole, to make a house. And then, being tired, goes out to eat. Python just comes, sees the hole, and just, when it sees the hole, it just slides back inside the hole. Turns around with its mouth open and goes to sleep. Mouse, after doing a lot of work, comes back into the house to sleep, and as soon as it comes inside, the python closes its mouth. That's because it's rushing into sleep, and it knows that its hole is so big, so it's going deeper so that nobody disturbs him, but he actually enters through the jaws of the python, and the python closes. So it has received the house, as well as it has consumed the very mouse, which was the cause. Similarly, when people take mortgage, mort means death, gauge means engagement until. So one takes an engagement until death. So they start working for the banks, not for the benefit, to engage this life on all the time and energy in serving Lord Shri Krishna. So we should not be foolish like that. We should be intelligent. And mercantile family in India is very intelligent. They don't take a mortgage. They, collect the money, or they, with the help of friends and family, they collect it, they buy the house, and then they don't have to worry so much about mortgage. So intelligence is very important. How we acquire intelligence is also very important, that we should endeavor and take lessons from all around us. So in this regard, there is a very nice story that comes as how there was a a sweet maker, like a halwai. He used to cheat people. Sometimes he would cheat them by giving them, the wrong weight material. He would overcharge them at times. When someone was not very good with mathematics, arithmetic, doing calculations, he would charge them sometimes double, and people would realize afterwards, but they couldn't do anything, so they were very upset. So there was this person by the name Gopal, and this Gopal was he was teacher at the school, and he comes to know that this sweet maker Bhola is not Bhola anymore. Bhola means a very simple person, right? But this Bhola is not Bhola. He is actually a big cheater. So when he comes to know, so many people report to him that this halwai Bhola is cheating us. The sweet maker Bhola is cheating us of wealth, and he is not giving us what's supposed to be given. So Bhola decides to teach him a lesson. So he observes the daily routine. What used to happen during the afternoon, Bhola would go to take a nap, and he would put his son as an in charge for the sweet shop. So one day, when Bhola tells his son, I'm going to sleep for 2 hours, don't disturb me. And he goes to sleep, and his son is, guarding. Gopal comes, and he picks up a pot of sweet and starts eating. And now the son says, what are you doing? He says, don't worry, I'm your father's friend. And he says, but I should wake up my father, let him know that you have come. He said, no, don't worry. I just wanted to have some sweets, so I decided to come. So he's like, but my father would get upset. You're just eating away. He said not to give to anyone. He said, I'm his friend. You can ask him, tell him Makhi has come. Right? Makhi is on the sweets and he's eating sweets.
Makhi means fly.
Makhi means fly, right? The house fly. So now the son goes to his father. He says, Father, Makhi is here. Father says, don't disturb me. He's like, but Father, Makhi is on the sweets. He's, he's eating sweets. And father says, let him eat. Don't worry, don't bother me. Let me sleep. And if you wake me up once more, I'm going to give you a, nice thrashing. So now the son is afraid, he doesn't want to be scolded and punished by his father. He says, okay, he just stays quiet. And Bhola, is eating nice, and then he says, well, I'm not really satisfied, so I'll take some more. So he says, Father, Makhi is taking away some of the sweets. Father says, how much sweet can he take away? Let him take, And then he goes. And now the son, does not stop Gopal from taking pots of sweets, and then Gopal goes away. Of course, we all know what happens when father wakes up and the son does get punished. But this is a lesson where one can use intelligence to bring balance to this world. And sages,
That's why saintly persons, they don't engage in over-endeavor, rather they engage in benefiting the society. They engage in Krishna Katha, they engage in chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now you could say, well, if they are doing all these activities about devotion service, who's trying to, nourish the body? Don't people have to work hard to make sure that the body gets food? Yes, it is very important. But you should also look at it with the right perspective, right? If this body is like a cage, the soul is like the bird in the cage. Well, while you are trying to keep this cage very nicely made of gold and keep it very shiny and make sure that it is properly waxed and really shining up and putting ornaments on this cage, the poor bird is starving inside, right? Inside the cage, the soul in the body. So Srila Prabhupada always identified that one should be very careful to make sure that the soul is nourished. Otherwise, such persons who don't take to devotion service are actually considered killer of the soul. And that's why when we engage, whoever is our deity, we should engage in pleasing them, not using them as our order suppliers. Sometimes people, they think, oh, this is a great personality, let me call them my order supplier. Let me ask them to give this and that and that and more and more. Well, there is enough in this world to meet the need of every being, yet there is not enough to meet the greed of one person. So here, intelligence has to be used properly to create balance. And by engaging in devotional service, the soul, the living entity in the heart of the body, that living entity gets nourishment. And it also pleases Lord Shri Krishna. And of course, when we are doing all this devotional service, any nice food stuff that is prepared, we offer it to Lord Shri Krishna. Then it becomes transcendental. And accepting that, because that becomes prasad. Prasad means mercy of the Lord. So when we accept that prasad, it nourishes the body and the soul. So that's called Sone Pe Suhaga, right? We are getting twice the benefit. And that second benefit is transcendental in nature, which is to pacify us. How does it pacify? So it is said, Rupa Goswami, he explains that our senses are too dull, right? They're gross senses, and especially our knowledge acquiring senses. And that's the focus today. So we have to look at it from the perspective that our tongue, our eyes, our nose, our ears, and the skin, they basically they interact with the sense objects, and they acquire this knowledge or, the various kind of experiences, perceptions that they said. That's why pratyaksh is being used. From our senses, we perceive this material world. And when we engage in this material world with that perspective, we want to make sure that we are, also able to see who's behind this. And who's behind this? Lord Shri Krishna. But our senses are too dull that we cannot perceive him. So the simple solution is that one can engage in devotional service. There is a very nice verse. Atah Shri Krishna namadi nabhave graham-indriyaha sevon mukhehi jivado swayameva sfrutyadaha. Atah Shri Krishna namadi. Lord Krishna's name, form, activities, pastimes, paraphernalia and all. Nam adi. Adi means and, etc., etc., etc. Na bhaved grahayam indriya. Cannot be perceived because they are transcendental and these are gross, the senses in the mode of passion. So they cannot perceive. But when we engage our strongest sense, which one is the strongest sense? Our tongue, in serving Lord Krishna. So our tongue also happens to be Jnanendriya as well as Karmendriya, right? So as Jnanendriya, we accept prasadam. So by eating Lord's prasadam, the tongue is purified and we are able to see Lord Krishna. Yet, as Karmendriya, tongue is interested in constant vibration, right? Constantly vibrating. So instead of engaging in gossip, if we call out to the Lordship, sing various prayers and call out to Him, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And read nicely all these scriptures with the family. We can purify the tongue. And Lord Krishna will manifest himself. He will become visible to our very senses, and we will experience the transcendental bliss. That's why sometimes when devotees come, when they come to the temple, how is it that we come to the temple and everything is so nice, right? We feel so much peaceful at heart, everyone is smiling, and we are in a nice mood. Yet at the same time, when we walk out afterwards, everything seems to be so strange. And sometimes during the discourses also, people forget about their family, everything. Everyone is thinking of Lord Shri Krishna. When everyone is singing, everyone is constantly enjoying the, nectarian kirtan. And the moment they walk out, they're like again reminded, because Maya is ready to pounce on them. So they're again reminded of the various tribulations in the life. Yet for all kind of bewilderment, all kind of anxiety, there is one simple solution. Engaging in devotional service and calling out to the Lordship. So by taking prasad, prasad is called mercy, one can purify. So intelligence is a subtle element, also from material, nature. And it has to be used properly. So the use of intelligence is also very important. How do we use intelligence? And there is a beautiful story of a logical bull. So Srila Prabhupada used to tell this story to his disciples and devotees, that once there was this great scholar. He goes to get the wheat for grinding, right, at the, what do you call it, the flour mill, or flour mill. So he goes there, and in old days, the way it used to be there is like there was a big rod and there was a grinding stone, and so this rod was tied to the grinding stone with another stick, and the bull would go around, and the stone would ground all the wheat, and it would come out as flour. So he goes there, and he calls out to the man, the master of the bull, and the master comes in and says, I need this wheat to be grounded. So they say, no problem. He weighs it, puts it in that container where the grounding stone is there, and he hits the bull, and the bull continues to walk. And now this guy, the master of the bull, he goes back to doing his household things and all, and he observes that every time bull stopped, somehow this guy comes to know, he comes and hits him with a stick, and the bull starts moving. So after some time he starts thinking that why is this happening? Then he pays attention. What's happening is, when the bull is moving, it has a bell in its neck. So the bell is moving, and so the bell is ringing in the neck of the bull. And the moment it stops, the bell stops ringing. So the guy comes to know, okay, now the bull is not moving, let me give him a nice hint that it should continue to move. So the master of the bull would come, pick up his stick, and as soon as the bull sees the stick, he would start moving, and sometimes he would get the little beating, and then it would start moving. So at the end, this scholar just wanted to know that how is this man so intelligent? So he says, so why do you do all those work, and while the bull is doing this? So of course the man reveals that, I have to take care of so many things. I cannot be sitting here taking care that the bull is moving. So I have this bell, it rings. When it stops ringing, I know he has stopped. So I come with the stick, as you saw. You're an intelligent man. So I, give him a little beating, and then the bull starts running. The work gets done, and I get to do other things in parallel. That's intelligence. So, but this guy says, the scholar says, but what if bull would not move, just stand at one place and just, move its neck? Then the bell would continue to move, and you wouldn't know that the bull has stopped, moving, stopped walking. So at that time, the, master of the bull, he's the shopkeeper, he smiles. He's like, my dear sir, he's not a logical bull. That's an intelligence that you have, I have. He doesn't have that intelligence. So this is a logical bull story where bull is dull by nature and cannot use the intelligence. But we should not use our intelligence to find ways, to be lazy. That's where sometimes it's very interesting. Invention, necessity is the mother of invention, it is said. And when I was a kid, it was a very nice story. It was told like how science has been used to make our life easy, but also sometimes to promote laziness. And anything that makes your life easy is machine. So there was this man, every time the train would come, he had to climb the pole, change the signal, just move it up so that everybody knows the train is coming, and come down. So he was getting tired, like every time I have to climb this pole, do this, just flip the signal so that the guys know that the train is coming, and then they would do the actions on their side. So he's thinking, how do I make it easy? So using his intelligence, he ties, a rope to the signal board, and he pulls the rope on one side, so the signal goes on to say that the train is coming, pulls it on the other side, and the signal goes down, so the train is not there. Now, similar concept was used to create the, blockers to the road. So if there is a road crossing, at the railway crossing, if there is a road, going in perpendicular, so at that time, similarly, instead of trying to lay down, the 4 or 5 people would pick up the log and they would block the road so that people know that they're not, they don't have to cross. One person thinks, well, how can I make it easy? So they use weight and lever concept to block the road and open it up again, using a rope, pull it down, and so forth. So yes, intelligence is very important. Yet at the same time, it should be to make, to be beneficial. So in this way, they are benefiting the society so that people are not crossing when the train is coming and they are not getting killed or injured. They are not facing any kind of injury. So that is a beneficial aspect. So we have to use our intelligence properly. This man, there was one man, he was very lazy by nature. And he would not work. So now he was kicked out by his house. He goes to the jungle. And there he finds a nice rishi and he says, please, engage me and please give me shelter. So the rishi, he gives him shelter, but he pays attention that while his disciples are working hard, this man is just lying under the tree. And one day, the sage, he says, let's go. The rishi means sage. Let's go for a walk, in the jungle. So the man goes along with this sage. And as they're walking, the sage points to him, see this limping fox? This fox only has 3 legs, doesn't have the 4th leg. Do you think how does this fox survive? So man says, yes, it must be so difficult for this fox to survive. So he says, okay, let's climb the tree and see how this fox survives. So they climb a tree. What do they see? A lion comes out, goes after, deers and gets one of the deer, eats it. And then afterward, this fox is coming, but all the animals are running away, but the fox is not running away because it can't run. It has only 3 legs. How fast can it run? So it's useless. But to this man's surprise, this lion leaves a piece of meat for the fox. Instead of killing the fox and making it his prey, the lion leaves a piece of meat and then walks away. So the lesson we learn here is, so the sage says, what do you learn? He says, wow, the sage is like, the fox is just like me, doesn't like to work. So the lion is feeding him. So that's what I'm learning. So sometimes we use intelligence to perceive what we want to see. The sage corrects him. He says, no, you have capable body, you have a strong body, you're a stout man. So you are like lion, and understand that you have to help people who are not capable of doing things. So that is what saintly people do. To help people really have this vision, Shastra Chakshush. Through the scriptures, they awaken the human society. Everyone is sleeping. And from these lessons that we are getting from these 24 gurus, and especially today the focus is on senses. how our senses cause so much distress. Now, we just covered the honeybee, which collects honey, and the honey thief takes away what is collected. So that is what happens when in this world, people who are very intelligent at snatching away, and there are various ways Srila Prabhupada explained. The wealth is taken away. We'll hear later on in 11th canto about the story of Avanti Brahman. Sometimes it's very interesting. People get confused between Avdhuta Brahman and Avanti Brahman. So again, that's a different Brahman, it's a different story. And he was very much engaged in hoarding things, and he was very miser. So we should be very intelligent not to spend our precious time in over-endeavor, in acquiring more, consuming more, and sleeping in this material world, and not awakening to spiritual consciousness. We should be regulated. That's why it's very important to be regulated. And regulation means there are some prohibitions and there are some important activities. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says one should not eat too much, one should not eat too little, one should not sleep too much, one should not sleep too little. Now the interesting thing is he talks about eating before sleeping. Why? Because when you overeat, then two things happen. First is you could fall into the mode of passion, where your body, desire increases for sense gratification. So that's why people who have enough to eat, they want to have entertainment in parallel. So that is because of mode of passion. So you want to engage more and more in sense gratification. And that is like burning, it burns you inside. That's like senses are like fire. And if you pour clarified butter in fire, ghee in butter, in fire, what happens? The fire becomes stronger. The senses are seeking more and more and more sense gratification. And finally, one becomes, from lust comes anger. Kamaisha, Krodhaisha, Rajo, Guda, Sabudbhava, Mahashana, Mahapapma, Vedyamina, Veridam. So from lust, anger arises. And anger causes, the mind becomes the worst enemy. And this lust leading to anger is in the mode of ignorance, lust is in the mode of passion. So one who's in the mode of passion, seeking sense gratification, further falls down to mode of ignorance. What's the other effect of overeating? Other effect of overeating or over-acquisition and over-hoarding is that one becomes, sleepy, sleep endurance. So one falls asleep. So there is a very common term known as food coma, right? When people eat too much, their body has become useless. So, but they are not just affecting their material body, they are also affecting the soul, because the soul is starving inside. The body has taken too much, but not a simple drop, not even one drop of transcendental, nourishment has been given to soul. So such people in mode of passion and mode of ignorance, Srila Prabhupada and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada also, they identified that one should wake up now. Otherwise this time will be taken away. And all the acharyas warn us that we should not be sleeping in this material world. Rather, we should start engaging in devotional service as soon as possible. So Krishna consciousness is a great benediction to human society, where we can awaken our love for Godhead. And that starts simply with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now intelligence, when it's said, it's also very important for us to know the audience. And on Facebook and WhatsApp, it's very difficult to know the audience. So, so there was this preacher, he was just following the, teaching of his teacher, and then he goes to a village and he says, lying is sin. And he's saying that by lying you may cheat the other person, but it's very sinful because you will be suffering. Sometimes people can lie and then take away someone's property. They can lie and make great wealth. They can lie and take advantage of other people. So he was telling all the things that people can do with lying. At the end he says, so what do you learn? So an elderly gentleman of the village, he had spent all his life in the village, and his ancestors for many generations had been in the village. So he says, he gets up, he says, today we learned about the benefits of lying. So it's very important for us to understand who the audience is, right? Because in this village, nobody knew that you could lie and take advantage of others, or to escape any kind of punishment. Any mistake that you may have performed, you can cover yourself. And just by giving the wrong instruction, this preacher happened to have delineated the whole society in the wrong direction. So we should also be very, very careful not to become so speculative, but understand the message as it is. That's why Srila Prabhupada wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is. What does as it is means? The two meanings people derive. From materialist perspective, they say, we're going to keep it on the shelf as it is. So that is not the purpose. It will have some benefit, but the true benefit is when you open it up and you read the verses from Bhagavad Gita, read Srila Prabhupada's purpose, the translated ecstasies of Srila Prabhupada, then you derive the true benefit and practice it in your life. This is a practical knowledge, it's a human manual that we can directly take to practice in our life. Just like we cover so many verses, learning so many examples. So, we talked about the honeybee, Makshika, and we also talked about the honey thief. So, honey thief is referred to as 14th instructing spiritual master by Lord Dattatreya, and is combined with this honeybee situation. So, they are considered one together as a pair. Then, Lord Dattatreya, Avadhuta Brahman, is revealing the next instructing spiritual master as elephant. Elephant. What did he learn from an elephant? So remember, we are talking about senses. Elephant is attracted, a male elephant is attracted to have the touch of female elephants. So the sense of touch is very strong in the case of elephants. So here, this particular characteristic that they want to enjoy sense gratification by the sense of touch is being exploited by the animal hunters, or people who capture animals to use in various kind of strenuous labor, carrying big weights and even sometimes performing jungles and so forth. Sometimes just for their tusks and their hide, just to kill them and use that. So how do they do this? They use a female elephant, they tie a female elephant at a distance, and right in front of the female elephant, they dig a hole. And then this hole they cover it with, branches and all, on the surface only. And it's very lightweight. And then they put grass and other things, mud and so forth. So it doesn't look visible. It's a trap. And it's big enough, so if an elephant falls in, the elephant cannot come out on its own. So what happens is the female elephant is there making various kind of sounds, and the male elephant comes, and he sees the female elephant, and because he's so attracted, by the sense of touch, he wants to engage in sense gratification. So he comes, running to see this female elephant, and he falls in the ditch. And he can't get out, and he is caught by the elephant hunters. So this is a lesson that we learn from elephant, that if there is too much attraction towards the opposite sex, then it will cause one to suffer in this material world. One would have to face hellish conditions in future life, because this attraction would cause us to fall away from the purpose of this life. And what's the purpose of the life? Is to attain the love of Godhead. So that's the goal. What is the process? Devotional service, the 9 process of devotional service, those are the processes. So that is Abhidaya, Prayojana is the goal. And then Sambandh. Sambandh is what's the relationship? Jivera Sarupoya Krishna Nityadas. every living entity is an eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. Some remember it, some don't. That's the difference. So here we are learning as how we have to focus on our march and engaging in devotional service and all our activities, all our prescribed duties to please Lord Shri Krishna. Lord Krishna told Arjuna, remembering me, get up and fight. So this is an instruction that remembering Lord Shri Krishna, we should engage in all our daily activities and have loving exchanges with everyone we meet. It's very important. His Holiness Bhakti Tirth Maharaj always provided this instruction that when we interact with someone, we should interact in such a loving mood, in such a pleasing mood, thinking of them as their friend and believing that they are our friends, right? As if the success of our spiritual life depends on this interaction. So in this mood, we have to invoke that mood. We have to practice. Practice, practice, practice. Practice makes a man perfect. So here, we should try to control our senses. And Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, just like a turtle, sensing danger, quickly withdraws its limbs inside its shell. That's how we have to control ourselves, by pulling ourselves away from the sense objects. So earlier we talked about moth as the guru, spiritual master, instructing a spiritual master. And moth is attracted by the sense of sight, right? So by eyesight. And when it sees flame, right, then it just jumps into the fire and burns itself. So that's also a sense gratifying aspect, because it gets mesmerized by the flame, it rushes towards the flame, cannot stop it and burns. So again, senses are very strong, and the instructions are basically for us, that when we see a beautiful form of a woman, in the case of man, and in the case of women, when they see a handsome man, a very opulent looking man, a very rich man, a very, a great speaker kind of person, or one who is, who's a celebrity and so many other qualities. Srila Prabhupada used to say these are all zeros. All the qualities that we have are all zeros. But what is the value of all these zeros? You add all these zeros, the result is zero. But if you have Krishna, the Krishna appears as number one before all these zeros. Now it has value. So we should engage all our senses in pleasing Lord Rishikesha, who is the master of the senses. And then our senses will be satisfied. And Lord is also known as Govinda. Govinda means one who gives pleasure to the senses. And he is the reservoir of all pleasures. So we can make our life blissful just by engaging. We can make our life sublime by engaging in devotional service. Not by acting like moth, being attracted by opposite sex in very attractive figures and wearing nice clothes and wearing a lot of ornaments and having all these external effects, right? So what are those? They are like ornaments on a dead body, because if they are not engaging in devotional service, what benefit can we derive? So it's very important for us to learn from here. Now, after the elephant story, of course, honeybee and honey thief story is repeated by Lord Dattatreya to remind us of how a honey thief, a person who is very expert, and Srila Prabhupada also explained how there are various kind of agents in this material world who are ready to take away all the hard work that we have done to acquire whatever we have. They are expert in taking it all away. Of course, thieves and rogues are one, but also our senses, they overindulge in sense gratification, depriving us of the benefit of this human life. That's also another agent. Then extension of our senses and our lust, or our identity and condition state is our children, relatives and friends. They deprive us of this wealth because we feel responsible to maintain them, and sometimes they cheat us of what we have. Then fourth is taxes. So we have to pay taxes to the king, to the government for proper maintenance. So they take away. So that's another way. Banks we already talked about. They are constantly showing us that they are benefiting us, but in reality they're taking away the financial institutes. And especially people who like to use stock market, they don't realize that actually all the agents have this nice scheme that they would always rotate your money and derive 4.5, 6%, whatever their management fee is, continuously from your money, while you never see your money. You just see the figure on a piece of paper that, oh, it's increasing, oh, it's dropping, oh, it's increasing. So actually, both cases, it's, instead of regulated, it's causing irregularity in your life. And you have become a patient of heart, you're having all kind of anxieties, you're spending too much time in all these activities, so they are also taking away. So the solution is to engage our mind and senses in devotional service. Bhajahu re mana shinanda nandada bhaya charinara vindare. So it is very important for us to engage our mind in devotional service. Understand it. Just raise your hand and call out to the Lordship. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, honey thief takes away whatever belonging it has. And Lord, if nothing else is there, then for the conditioned souls, people who are not devotees, Lord appears as death. Time I am, he says, devourer of all things. So in due course of time, everything is taken away. At the time of death, everything is left behind, whatever you have acquired as materially. The only thing that goes with you is your karma cycle, right? The reactions now you have to suffer or enjoy. And also, if you are a devotee, then those reactions are gone as well. So you can progress on your spiritual journey faster. You get God's speed. And you are able to go back home, back to Godhead. That's not the goal, that's the effect. The cause is love of Godhead. So that's also very important to make sure. Now, Lord Dattatreya is Avdut Brahman, he is telling Raghu Maharaj Raghu, that a deer gets enchanted by musical sounds. So the hunter and the people who want to capture deer, they play flute and various kinds of musical instruments. And since the senses of deer, the sound vibration is very strong, it gets attracted. And what happens when the deer is listening to sound? It's not moving. So when the deer is not moving, it is sufficient time for the hunter to take the aim and kill the deer. In defense organizations, there's a very common saying on the battlefield, when 3 people are sitting and if they light a match and they light the cigarettes, by the time the third person is lighting the cigarette from that match, there is enough time for the enemies to spot them and kill them. So one of the thing is, don't have 3 or more people sitting together to enjoy a cigarette, smoke cigarette. But even better is not to smoke cigarette at all. Why try to seek sense gratification, which can cause death for you, right? You'll fall down. So similarly, just like an army man would not do a mistake of lighting up a match and sharing with his buddies to light up the cigarettes, we human beings, especially devotees, we are very cautious that not to, let our senses go freely in whichever direction they want to go. We have to live regulated life. Simple living, high thinking. And we don't want to be caught like the deer, mesmerized in this world where Maya can pounce on us and kill us and take away this beautiful opportunity that we have received in the form of human life. So it's only in the human birth that we have this opportunity to be able to invoke our devotion for Lord Shri Krishna, become Krishna conscious, and then go back home, back to Godhead. Now the next one is, the 16th Guru, Lord Dattatreya talks about is fish. Fish cannot control its tongue. So what does a fisherman does? He uses a hook and puts a bait on this hook and then puts it in the water. And the fish goes to enjoy this bait, thinking, oh, this is nice food stuff, goes there. What happens? The hook gets in his mouth and cannot get out and loses his life in due course of time. So similarly, we should be very careful. People who like to overeat because it's palatable have to be very, very careful, because it's not just a food coma that they're putting their body in, but also the soul. It is very harmful for the soul. And another way is people who are doing all this eating bad stuff, right, which is very harmful for the body. So you have to decide, is your body a temple or a graveyard? That's also very important. People who eat meat, do all kind of intoxication, that's the characteristic of graveyard. Bodies are buried in a graveyard, not in a temple. So in temple, Lord resides in the heart. So Lord is present. Lord Krishna himself is present in the heart of a devotee who's constantly singing his glories. While people who are eating meat, they are basically treating their body as a graveyard, not knowing that they are doing only because of this tongue, which is, falling for this hook, and the baits are all this, bad food stuff, which is very harmful anyway. And that's how COVID-19 spread, right? It spread from a meat market in Wuhan. And people, they could not control their tongue. And so all this fall down is happening. And so here we have another one, which is in a subtle manner. So in the purport it's described, Srila Prabhupada talked about this a lot, that a bee, when attracted by the fragrance of a lotus flower, of a flower, goes, and most of the flowers except for kumat, they close after this, at night. So when the bee goes in the lotus flower to enjoy its fragrance and take honey, the flower closes. And when the flower closes, it cannot get out and loses its life. So now we have example of all five senses being so strong that one can lose one's life. In the case of elephant is the touch, sense of touch. So when we see, beautiful shining body and the opposite sex form, beautiful attractive objects in this material world, we may want to touch them. Oh, this is silk, or this is so soft, and that. And we may just become too attracted, not understanding what's the purpose of these. They should be used in Lord Krishna's service to please Lord Shri Krishna, but rather we want to engage in our sense gratification, and so we become bewildered, and just like the elephant falls into the ditch and loses its life and loses its freedom, we may lose our freedom. We can become slave of this Maya. Second is the sense of smell, like the honeybee is going and attracted by the parag of lotus flowers and loses its life when the lotus closes. Then we have the example of a deer attracted by the sound vibrations. By hearing the sound vibrations, by hearing melodious, mundane music, one can lose the precious time and thus losing their life in the long term. Eating is also, right? The tongue wants to enjoy a palatable foodstuff like fish. We get attracted towards palatable foodstuff. Yet at the same time, Lord Krishna says that one who does not offer it to me first and eats it, verily it's only sin. Yagyashishtaha shina santo muchyante sarvakil vishay bhunjate te tvagham papa ye pachantatma karanat. So yagyashishtaha shina santo muchyante sarvakil vishay. So all sacrifices are to be performed for Lord's pleasure, and all activities are to be engaged in satisfying Lord Shri Krishna. But one who does not offer the foodstuff, right? So it's a form of sacrifice, austerity, you can say. Before accepting it oneself, one has to offer it to Lord Shri Krishna. Then it becomes transcendental. And accepting it after that is purifying for our body, because it doesn't have any ill effect. So people, when they are not devotees, they get bewildered. Their intelligence bewilders them. And they say, wait a minute, people who are vegetarians, don't they, pluck plants and they, pluck various kind of vegetables and fruits and hurting the, plant kingdom, and then they are enjoying? Well, that's why in Krishna consciousness, we don't give much attention to vegetarians. Yes, they're better than the meat eaters, because, animal kingdom is a higher being than the plant kingdom, and they will be able to come very quickly to the human form of life if they are able to allow in their regular course, through different yonis, through different, births and so on. They will be able to progress and finally come to human form of life. Yet at the same time, vegetarians, they are still eating sin if they are not offering to the Lordship first. So whatever we prepare, we have to first offer it to the Lordship, and not just say in a envious mood that I have to offer it, okay, I'll do this, but rather with love and devotion. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhakta prayachati tadaham bhakto pritam ashnami prayatatmana. Lord Krishna says that patra, a leaf, pushpa, a flower, phal, a fruit, and toyam, little water, if one offers me with love, then I accept it. Right? So the word bhaktya and bhakt is being used twice because Lord is not interested in getting what we have, just like material things. He's interested in having our love. He wants to see we offer Him with love, with devotion, with gratitude. That, oh my dear Lord, you have provided me everything, including this body. So please, this is a little foodstuff that I have prepared. Please accept it out of your causeless mercy. And sometimes people say, wait a minute, you are just giving it to these idols, though they are not idols, they are deities. There is a big difference. These are not statues or idols. These are deities. And Srila Prabhupada gave the example of mailbox, right? So if you see a mailbox, you put your letter in there. So a mailbox is like a representative of the post office. It's an extension. So the postman will come and make sure that your letter in the authorized post box reaches its destination. So that's a deity form. So deity form is an extension of the Lordship. While if you try to create, make your own idol and say, okay, this is a deity, that will not work. If you try to make your own box and say, oh, this is a mailbox and write mailbox on it, the postman, if he doesn't see it as an authorized mailbox, will not open it. So your letter will stay there, it won't reach anywhere. Another example Srila Prabhupada shared was that of electric powerhouse. In our homes, we have the various connection points where on the socket, when we connect the various light bulbs, fan, and so many other electrical equipments, then they function because they are connected with the powerhouse. So the deities are connecting us with the original Supreme Personality of Lordhead, Lord Shri Krishna and Golok Vrindavan. So when we offer something to the deities, from their sight they can eat. So that's another characteristic in the spiritual world, and especially Lord. Angani yasya sakalendri avritti manti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chenmay sadujvala vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Lord Brahma is praying in Brahma Samhita that, Lord, you can perform any action, by any of your senses. So we can only perform one specific, but Lord is so wonderful, He's so amazing that He can eat from His eyes, He can walk from His ears. So it's just imagine, it's also inconceivable because we cannot perceive it. Yet He can do any action from any of His senses. So any engagement with the sense objects, He can do that. So deity form, just with their eyes, they can eat the foodstuff that we offer Him, the bhoga that we offer Him. And so the bhoga becomes sanctified, becomes Mahaprasad. And we accept it as remnants. And when we accept it, we meditate on the Lordship, His mercy. Why? Because Prasad is also mercy. Prasad means mercy because it is for our benefit, and it's also not just nourishing this body, it is purifying our senses and it is nourishing the soul. So those are some of the very important lessons. And then finally we come to the story of the prostitute Piṅgalā. What's her story? So Avdut Brahman, Lord Dattatreya, he is telling about the story of a prostitute to Maharaj Raghu. So Srimad Bhagavatam is Amal Puran. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that it has no fault. Yadu Maharaj. That's why to please Yadu Maharaj, Lord Krishna appeared in the Yadava dynasty or Yadu dynasty also called. So here, people sometimes get bewildered. Why are we talking about prostitutes? Why are we talking about Ras Leela? And who's narrating this whole Srimad Bhagavatam? Shukdev Goswami. He is appearing as a Bal Brahmachari from his very early age. He was a Brahmachari. And his body is just like 16 years old boy. His age on planet Earth is much longer, but his body is that of a 16-year-old boy. Just like the Chaturkumaras, they appear like 4 or 5-year-old boys. And so they don't even care about covering the bodies. Similarly, Shukdev Goswami doesn't care about covering the bodies. And the 9 Yogendras we talked about in the first 5 chapters, they don't worry about covering the bodies because they're in that avdhuta state, they're in a carefree state. They are transcendentally situated. So here, a great personality, Shukdev Goswami, he is narrating this incident of Lord Dattatreya sharing. And Lord Dattatreya is a primary expansion of Lord Shri Krishna, son of Atri and Anusuya. So he is telling about a prostitute, Piṅgalā. So this Piṅgalā, prostitute basically looks for sustenance through selling her body. And that's how she is living. But at the same time, Piṅgalā had she was attracted with the sense objects. She was deriving pleasure also in this due course. So one evening, she gets ready very nicely, wearing nice, ornaments and sari and all that stuff. Dressing up very nicely in a very attractive manner. She is waiting at the door of her house. And as she is waiting and seeing people cross on the street, she is looking at, this is a very nice person. He can be, he can give me nice, Lakshmi. He can pay me for my services. That's what she is thinking. And sometimes then the person would pass away and she would become a little morose. Then she's another man coming, right? So all her senses are engaged because she wants to enjoy the sense of touch. She's having this eyesight to kind of like seeing handsome man, rich man, attractive man, and men who are very good with their words, people who are being followed by, men who are celebrity and so forth. So she's all these different kind of men she's seeing on the street. She's thinking about, this is such a nice man. He can, give me nice treatment and he can really satisfy me. But what happens is, no one is coming to her. And she's becoming morose and more morose and more morose. She's becoming very sad, very frustrated. And in this way, the night passes and it's about midnight. And at that time, because of this great frustration that has developed, suddenly she realizes, why am I spending my life, running after all these men who are actually fallen soldiers, right? They are not going to deny me. Rather, I should engage my life in the service of Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So instantly, just by thinking this, she develops detachment from all these feelings, and her senses are attached at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. And she becomes transcendentally situated, and she finds amazing peace. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, 4 kind of people, they come to him. Chaturvija bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna artho jigyasu arthati jnanisya bharatarshava. So 4 kind of pious men, they come and take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. They take to devotional service. They become Krishna conscious. They want to aspire and become Krishna conscious, at least in the beginning. What are these 4 kind of people? Artho, one who is distressed. Piṅgalā was distressed. She was all night, she was waiting for someone to come and please her, and she would serve this person and she will get Lakshmi to sustain her also. She was seeking sense gratification as well as Lakshmi, so that, some nice fees for her services, so that she can live nicely as well. Jigyasu, one who is inquisitive, one who wants to know what is this world about, why am I here, what's the purpose of this life, why am I suffering, why is life so stressful, why are bad things happening to good people. All these kind of anxieties are there. Why is this COVID-19 there? How do I keep myself safe? How do I keep my family safe? How do I make sure that there is vaccine in time? How will I sustain my family while this COVID-19 effect is there, this lockdown is there? All these kind of questions arise. So that is inquisitiveness, that is also mixed with the distress that we feel, anxiety that we feel. Artharthi. So even though there is lockdown and whatever situation goes on around us, we still have to make sure that we are able to earn enough to sustain our family. So this question is always there. We are always seeking wealth and other facilities to sustain the family and our body and so forth. And then Jnani, intelligent. So intelligent person, and Jnani comes to a shelter by understanding that this world is a place of misery. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It is temporary in nature and is a place of misery. So there is nothing interesting, nothing auspicious in this material world. However, when we take to Krishna consciousness, the same material world, we start seeing it with different eyes as expansion of Lord Krishna's energy. And seeing that, we understand that we have to engage in the service of Lord Shri Krishna. And thus, we transcend the three modes of material nature when we engage in devotional service. So that is how a Jnani. And she uses her intelligence. Remember that today's lesson was all about intelligence, which is born of the mode of passion, but when we use in the right manner. So it is not that because it's born in the mode of passion, it is bad, we reject it. Rather, we use everything in this material world in service of Lord Shri Krishna. And that is the Kul mantra. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya vivarjanam rakshishyati iti vishwaso varnam tatha atma nikshepa kalparneya shadvita sharanagati. So the 6 limbs of surrender starts with these two. Anukulyasya sankalpa, accepting everything in favor of devotion service. So sometimes we may not see things favorable, so we have to take help from senior devotees, acharyas, to understand how everything is to be used in Lord Krishna's service. Pratikulyasya vivarjanam, and rejecting everything that is unfavorable to devotional service. Rakshishyati vishvasa, understanding and believing, having firm faith that Lord Krishna would provide us protection. Gopatitre varnam tatha, and accepting the guardianship of Lord Shri Krishna. Atma nikshepa, surrendering everything in service of Lord Shri Krishna. Karparneya, becoming humble, lower than the grass on the street, more tolerant than the tree. Not expecting any honor for ourselves, but giving all kind of ready to give all respects to others. In this manner, we can constantly engage in devotional service and engaging in our prayers to the Lordship to keep us engaged in devotional service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we can use the intelligence, just like a thorn is used to take out another thorn that is, in our body. So this material body that we have, how to get rid of this material body, attain the spiritual body, is just by spiritualizing this material body, by engaging in devotional service of Lord Shri Krishna, and using our intelligence favorably in Krishna consciousness. So these are the important lessons we learned today. How honeybee, right, the one that likes to collect, loses everything when a honey thief comes and takes away all the honey and the beehive and everything is gone. We learned about how an elephant loses its life or its freedom because of the sense of touch. We also learned how a deer, because of the sound vibrations, being mesmerized and hearing about the sound vibrations. Similarly, we become attracted to all the mundane sounds in this world. We can lose our precious time and our life in the due process. How a fish, because of his strong sense to taste something palatable, gets caught in the fish hook and thus loses his life. and how the prostitute Piṅgalā becoming so frustrated with her life and realizing that there is nothing auspicious in this material world and everything is auspicious at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, becomes situated in Krishna consciousness and engages her life in devotional service, thus transcending the three modes of material nature and experiencing the bliss of devotional service and attaining the love of Godhead. So those are the more, as all our senses, and in the form of human beings, we actually have all our senses so strong. So with advanced senses comes responsibility, and we should make sure that these senses, are used in serving the master of the senses, Rishikesha. So he is the master of the senses. That's the meaning of Rishikesha. So we can take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. We can become peaceful. And by taking these lessons, that we should not be attracted by sense objects and engaging with sense objects through our senses, we should use our senses in pleasing Lord Shri Krishna and applying these principles in our life to lead a regulated life, to lead a life where we are sleeping appropriate time, we are eating just the right amount to sustain this body, we are engaging in activities, hearing wonderful sounds, vibration of Lord's holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Reading such nice pictures, Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Lord Shri Krishna. So we have to engage all our senses, eating prasadam, that's also called prasad seva, and remembering the mercy of Lord Shri Krishna and how he is so wonderful, so great that he provides us all the necessities in our life and not engage in over endeavor, but rather seeking every endeavor to please Lord Shri Krishna. So that should be the lessons that we learn today. Hare Krishna, please join us for Nasimha Devati.
सर्वत्र श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.